Rodallega de Jager wants it back. He gets it back and leaves it through for Holtby. Oh, it's off the line. It's off the line.
Moving on from that, Chelsea versus Spurs. George, didn't you think that that was an absolute snooze fest?
I was so annoyed at that fixture. And I, this is the second time Chelsea have been up against a top six opposition and put me to sleep. I mean, it's not fair, man. Like I'm so excited for these games, and I'm sitting there with my biscuits and my glass of milk, and I'm so excited to watch.
What are you?
a baby.
Are you waiting for Santa Claus at the same time? What the fuck?
What is milk now?
As in cookies and milk, whatever. That's besides the point. I mean, it's an evening fixture for me, so whatever. That's besides the point.
I think we need to now talk about that and talk about
But
your
the
childhood histories at this point.
but the fact that Lampard once again has the most exciting thing that happened was Mason Mount's shot in the second half that Lloris did a really good save, and it had to wait that long for something definitive to happen. I agree that Lampard had Chelsea had more control over possession. I agree that that was the plan, that was Jose's plan to hit them on the counter. I agree, but with how Chelsea have been so positive in their last couple of runs of fixtures and the quality that they have, I'm starting to expect a little bit more. And every time they come up against top six opposition, I'm just let down. And that's really bad, especially where like this had the potential to be such a feisty fixture because you're up against Mourinho, so he's going to be charging up his players to do all sorts of shithousery in that game, even though it's going to be a park the bus kind of a scenario. But the fact that whoever won that fixture could have gone top of the Premier League table and cemented that position, not just be level on points with them, but actually have a difference between first and second. And for Chelsea have to not done that under Lampard, I don't think they did it last season. I expected a little bit more, but hey, this is what we got. This is what we got. This is the I'm feeling this is the same thing that we're gonna get every time we come with Chelsea against top six opposition. But I know Vishnu is gonna prove me wrong. So Vishnu, prove me wrong.
No, I think a level of cautiousness against the top opposition is something that is there. I'm not going to deny that and say like the way that we try to play against the lower sides is the same as when we go up against the Tottenham. And I think another thing is how both Tottenham and United are so good in transition and are sort of built as counter-attacking units that you need to be a bit more solid at the back so as to snuff out any kind of chances. So Tottenham had one shot on target throughout the game, and so I think Tottenham, with the kind of attacking prowess that they have and the goals that they've been scoring this season, to restrict them to one shot on target is pretty good. And I agree that it was not a spectacle and far from it, but like if anyone deserved to win the game, it was us. It was Chelsea. As in, I don't think Tottenham did anything remotely close, especially in the second half. They hardly had anything until the Zuma mistake in in stoppage time. So yeah, and if you look back at how leading up to the game, it was constantly Mourinho trying to play down the importance of the fixture. He kept telling about how uh, like this was just another game and it didn't really matter in the long run, and he's not thinking about title contender of them being title contenders, and like that's not something that you usually see in the lead up to the derby. So he was deliberately, I think, trying to lower expectations so that he could like do a classic Mourinho masterclass. And we saw an example of how good Tottenham can be in transition again in the game against City, where like if they had won, Mourinho would go and say something like, "They can take the ball, we'll take the 3 points," and laugh and be all cool. But he couldn't do that, and I think I won't say that we played the best football and we were incredible, but I think we played good. And this level of solidity is something that's been a hallmark of Chelsea after like towards the recent games under Lampard. as compared to how open we were in counter-attacking situations, especially in last season. Like if you remember, we started off with a 4-0 result against Manchester United. So from that to here, I think it's a real positive.
Do you think that like Tottenham ever were set up to even try to win that game? I feel like the when you play against Mourinho, the game starts a week before it actually does. So the mind games you have to sign up. I mean, you don't sign up for it, but you're gonna have it.
You're gonna get
So
it
yeah,
anyway.
you're gonna get it. That's a different point. I don't think like Spurs ever looked like they were going to win the game because I don't think they were trying to win the game. They didn't even look like their whole thing was not we're not going to like let any goals go in, and somehow Mourinho's made that defense really solid, even though he changes it like every other week or something. Joe Rogan's namesake Joe Rogan comes in. No one's ever heard of him. The Joe Rogan experience. I heard someone on TV say that. He had an amazing game. He was pretty solid actually. But Spurs didn't look like they wanted to win that game, and Mourinho will just go and win the next few games against the lower teams and solidify that first position. And I believe him when he says that Tottenham are not in a title race. That squad is probably not going to be able to sustain it. At some point, Kane is going to get injured, and the goals are going to dry up. So I feel it's a waiting game for that.
I mean,
Yeah, but at least compared to last season, they've actually stocked up on, like they didn't even bring on Bale, and they actually have a decent backup striker now with Vinicius. So I think the squad is pretty decent. I won't say it's as thin as say maybe an Arsenal where if Aubameyang, not that they're scoring goals, but if Aubameyang gets injured, that's basically it. It's Lacazette and
No,
vibes. Yeah,
Arsenal, Lacazette and vibes. I mean, Arsenal are just like bad vibes now. Anyway, I think yeah, we'll get to those guys in a moment.
yeah. I'm
Uh,
sorry. I'm sorry, for guys. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Sorry
I
to
feel
be there.
I feel like no. If you start on Arsenal, I have to pepper them before we do move on. But I'll try to hold on.
Yeah. Like one thing I felt like which we could sort of criticize Lampard on is his in-game management. Like an example would be like most time in most games I feel like he once he puts out a starting 11 he waits out till around 60 70 minutes where it's more reactive than being proactive in the sense that he waits for something to happen or something to go wrong before he actually makes a substitution. Whereas like he doesn't try to change games like in game. For example, in the first half, I think it was mentioned in the halftime discussion as well, where how deep Sissoko was playing, and even Hoiberg was dropping pretty deep. Like Sissoko is almost playing as an additional centre back, following Werner all the way into the half space, and the Chelsea midfielders weren't actually taking advantage of that. And this was probably some like maybe could be ZH coming inside and trying to exploit the central areas, or maybe bringing on someone like Kai Havertz who sort of is incredibly good at exploiting these vacant spaces. We didn't see that. It was maybe it was because it was Tottenham. He was trying to be a bit more cautious, but I've seen that being a recurring theme in most games where he's sort of reluctant to be proactive and try to change the games until his hand is forced or until he has to do it. Like we saw halftime subs during the West Brom game, but we are 3-0 down and he had to make a change. But in the Tottenham game in the cup as well, we were leading 1-0 and we lost control of the game in the second half and Tottenham were growing into it and a lot of players were getting tired. But he didn't change anything. And once Tottenham equalized, it was already too late and we lost on penalties in the end. So I think Lampard has to improve his in-game management. Like he has to try and be proactive and try to change games and try to, go for the win in some cases. Where I see that he's a bit more cautious and he tends to be like reluctant to try to get the change the game.
yeah. I want to also talk about Ndombele. I think
Oh,
we always talk about him. Or I always talk about him. I feel
oh, he's
he's
mad, dude. absolutely press resistant. There's no point in pressing.
He's so good. He's as hunky as Hulk Hogan, but as graceful as a ballerina. Like when he,
Did you
I,
write that down?
He did make a
I
note.
think I got it from Twitter, so you probably have to. I'm not
Give it
original.
credit now.
I'm not original, but the way he holds the ball and so progressive that nobody else has that ability in that team. Like Kane is good for long passing and for shooting. I don't see Son do this. He used to do this where he's on the ball, he's looking to take on people, he's trying to, cut inside. Where now you just see him make off the ball runs and try to finish it when he gets into the box. I guess this is how his evolution as a player is. But now Ndombele is kind of like Spurs' spearhead when they have to progress the ball from midfield to attack. And he does it really well. And that's a rejuvenation of the past where Mourinho used to slate him for his performances in training. So I think all credit to him. And yeah, um, I like it whenever he starts in the number 10 role. And I just wish that Mourinho didn't play this kind of football because he would thrive in other teams and Ndombele. But I guess when you have to adjust to like 30% possession, and it's kind of sad that you only get to see him do this a third of the time in a football match, which is a shame. But I guess it is what it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ndombele is like if he has the ball and he doesn't want to give it to you, you can't take it out of him. You can't like press and make him force him to make a mistake. But sometimes he just gives you the ball. Like if he doesn't want it, he'll just pass it to you. Like that's sort
If
of
he's
player.
bored, if he's
Yeah, if
bored.
he's bored, he'll just give it to you. But if he's in the he's incredibly press resistant. Like it's insane how good he is. Even when being pressured by multiple players, he just sort of wriggles through it and comes away with it. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Now, the
yeah.
question being, for Spurs, are they an actual title contender?
Probably not. Because if you think about it, the best team, the Premier League champions are the best team in England. These guys, if they win, no one will ever call them the best team in England because there will be a way there's like three or four other teams that are better than them. So
Name
it's
them in order, George.
Liverpool.
He's not gonna.
City.
Is he gonna say Liverpool?
I'm gonna say
Yeah, yeah.
Liverpool. Liverpool,
Said Liverpool.
City,
Is it
Chelsea.
Liverpool first? You're gonna
Liverpool
jinx
first.
it, George. You know you're gonna jinx it.
Shut up. Liverpool, City, Chelsea, United. Yeah, no,
Or
Leeds.
say Arsenal. Say
See, the list
Arsenal
is
for the.
fucked. The list is
Leeds.
fucked. The list is
Okay, but
insane.
that's not the point. These guys aren't title challengers. No, no
Oh,
way.
Fair
they
enough.
are for me. They are for me. I think with the sort of uncertainties and the kind of performances that we've seen from the likes of Liverpool and City, who were the front runners last couple of seasons. I think Tottenham are in the mix as well. Like especially if the starting 11 can remain fit. Like
But
if they get injured, they probably don't have like for like replacements for a Kane or a Son. But if they can actually pull through, I don't see why they have to regress.
I mean, my only issues is that whenever they play, they are grinding out victories, but they don't play good football. Like that West Brom game, they didn't deserve to win that, right? And they nicked the win at the end, and it was pretty disgusting. And Vishnu, we can relate to this because after every Spurs
Yeah,
game, we will say,
Spurs are disgusting.
yeah, I mean, so in that regard, I would say Chelsea have a more of a title claim because if Chelsea win the league and they look back and we all collectively look back on the season, we can say that hey, shit, they played pretty well, right? There were times where they played really well, good football. They scored a lot of goals and they were formidable at the back. And for me, that's what a champion's mentality and that's what it means to be a Premier League champion. And I don't think Spurs have it, man. This ain't it. This ain't it, Chief.
Yeah, but then I think that's a bit of like it's about them playing the kind of football they're playing. Like if you look at the like currently they've scored 21 goals, which is one shorter than Liverpool and Chelsea. and have conceded 9, which I guess is the best record
is,
in the
yeah.
league. So they sort of have one of the best attacks and the best defense. So, like from what we've seen in the season, I don't see why they're not in the conversation at least. Yeah, and of course they're at the top of the table. So that's a good shout as well.
I mean,
But yeah,
that's the most important.
I think it's a little too tight. This season's a bit too tight with how congested everyone is at the top of the table, and it's pretty early days. So I think it's going to go right down to the wire.